But I am positive that on certain days their heads must have been spinning, wondering what on earth was going to happen next. This was one of those days. Now we need to remember that what just happened before this was they had had a near-death experience on a boat going across the lake. And when fishermen are frightened by the weather, it's got to be bad. And even though Jesus had woken from his nap and calmed the winds and waves, those disciples' pulses hadn't yet calmed down as they reached shore. Then as Jesus stepped from the boat, out of nowhere comes a blood-curdling scream, and a wounded, naked man racing towards Jesus. His hair is matted, his eyes wild. On his wrists and ankles are the remains of broken chains and ropes that had been used unsuccessfully to restrain him. Here we go again, the disciples must have thought. This apprentice training school is full of surprises. He called himself Legion, but that is not his true name. That is not who he is. It is rather what has become of him, what has happened to him. The emotional and spiritual disruption and disintegration of his life. That he knows himself to be Legion means the causes, sources, and manifestations of this disruption and disintegration are many and great. Historically, Legion refers to a Roman army unit of about 6,000 soldiers. So when this man says that he is Legion, he's saying, I have been overrun. I am divided and separated. I am fragmented and fractured. I'm disrupted. I am overwhelmed. My life is broken into 6,000 pieces. Now, for the most part, we moderns don't give a whole lot of credence to demons. But no matter what you think about the demons, to understand this story, we must remember that they were intensely real to the people of Gerasa and to this tormented man. And truth be told, we do know about the frightening reality of demons. To watch someone you love sinking into the helpless depths of despair, sinking despite everything you have tried to say and do to help, that's among some of the most painful of all human experiences. And the ripples multiply. Alcoholism is a family illness, a contagious disease, substance abuse, counselor told me. The troubled man named Legion who raved at Jesus that day surely had a family, parents, perhaps a wife and children who raved and raged with him, sometimes against him, in quietness or in howling despair. Those who were made miserable through that demonic possession also were legions. I know that you know first or second hand about demons. In this story, we clearly see whose side Jesus is on. Jesus comes unafraid of death or the tombs in which this man lives. He is not distracted by the man's craziness. He is not repulsed by the man's nakedness or appearance. He is not limited by the chains and shackles that bind this man's life. He is unchallenged by the guard. Legions hold no power over Jesus. When the man saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" Within that question are recognition and non-recognition, likeness and unlikeness, sameness and difference. The man knows Jesus is nothing like him, and yet something within the man knows that he is like Jesus. Something within him can still recognize Jesus, the divine one, the one who saves, the one who is whole, complete, and holy. We can only ever recognize that which we already know. That which at some level is already a part of us. Despite the presence of Legion, the true image of this man has never completely lost or been destroyed. It may have taken over, covered up, forgotten, denied, or ignored, but it's not absent. It was this true image, a reflection of Jesus himself, that recognized Jesus. That is as true for us as it is for that man in today's gospel. Jesus stands before us as the mirror, the image, the truth teller of who we really are. He gives us back ourselves. He reveals the original beauty of our creation. He stands before us with a truth that challenges us at all the places in which our lives have become fragmented and distorted. In the ways in which we are not true to ourselves, and in the times when our identity has been lost and shattered. Jesus comes to the man seeing and knowing a truth about him that the man can neither see nor know at that moment for himself. How can he? He has been convinced that his name is Legion. Jesus knows otherwise. In the face of that truth, the unclean spirit cannot remain. Legion can never be our final reality. That will always be Jesus. That is the truth that commanded Legion to leave. That is the truth that puts life back together. That is the truth that clothed this man, returned him to himself, and seated him at Jesus' foot. Always remember whose side Jesus is on. Jesus makes war on the demons of the bottle, of the mind, demons in the drugs, demons in the family. Jesus is no well-meaning but essentially impotent friend. Jesus has power. Power even to defeat our ultimate adversaries. Power unleashed in compassion for the confused and the possessed. He boldly confronts those forces that bind us and commands them to come out from us, to leave us, to unbind us and let us go, to allow us to have some semblance of control over our disordered lives. Theologian Stanley Morris has said that one of the most challenging tasks of being a Christian is learning to live our lives out of our control and under God's beneficent, demanding vocation and guidance. See, too often we live our days acting as if our lives are completely our own, our very own possessions to use in any way we happen to feel we want. But then come those moments when we absolutely, positively know that our lives are not our own. That we are not the sole actors in the drama that we are living. Christians are those who try to live in such a way that our lives would make no sense without reference to the God who is commanding us, guiding us, leading us toward people we don't want to love and into situations we don't necessarily want to face. So maybe that's why any well-functioning congregation ought to have its share of people who know firsthand what this naked man living alone among the tombs knew. Life out of control. To feel awfully alone, naked, and vulnerable, possessed. To feel like the man in today's story, living alone out among the dead. And if that's you, or if that has ever been you, or if someday down the line you find yourself there, here's the message from this strange, miraculous story. Jesus comes to you, wants to touch you, to heal you, to restore you to complete sanity, to bring you back into the community, to put your demons to rout, and to clothe you in his love. Always remember whose side Jesus is on. And a postscript. Today, more than 100 fathers and mothers are grieving for a child who was killed or wounded 1 week ago at the hands of a demonic possessed shooter. As a nation, we cannot agree on what it will take to achieve peace among us and to keep innocent people from dying. Some will argue that if more people had been armed, the slaughter could have been halted early on. Others will argue that no private citizen should be allowed to possess an automatic assault rifle. The differing views on gun control, help for the mentally ill, the nature of Islam, the radicalization of young Americans, aid to refugees are legion. But we can agree, can we not, that violence as a means of venting frustration is wrong. That verbal violence sets a very bad example, especially for our young ones. That incivility, and lack of respect for people different from ourselves, whether because of political affiliation, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, religion, handicap, too often leads to abuse. That hate is a negative and harmful emotion. That we can choose to live as people of peace, renouncing verbal and physical violence. That proactively initiating an act of kindness to someone who's radically different from us will bless both the giver and the receiver. And that Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray even for those who abuse you." Always remember whose side Jesus is on. Amen.